This video is about developing students' estimation skills. In it we look particularly at length measurements, but in doing so we also discuss an activity model called Guess, Estimate and Measure. It's a powerful model that can be applied in many situations to help students become more aware of the need to estimate before measuring or before calculating. Why do I say this is important? A few years ago, I was involved in a research project about what numeracy skills were needed by workers. We interviewed people in a range of manufacturing and health industries. One of the clearest messages from those workers was that their ability to estimate was vital, both to their work efficiency and to workplace safety. They constantly needed to estimate with weights, safe weights to lift or store on shelves, with times, what jobs could fit before lunch times and what would have to wait till after, and how all these could fit into the allocated time they had with each patient. They also had to estimate quantities of materials. Could an order be filled with the metal sheets in stock, or should they wait for a new shipment? And also estimate calculations. They couldn't just trust a calculator or spreadsheets without roughly knowing what kind of answer to expect. Mistakes in the workplace cost money, and it's so easy to press the wrong key or press a zero key for too long when you use a calculator. I started the session by asking the group to estimate Michael's height. They gave a number of responses, some in feet and inches and some in metric units. 6'3". Anybody else has a guess on the height?
I think he's taller than 6'3".
Me too. He's about 190, isn't he?
6'4". Yeah.
Okay, what's your point of reference for this 6'4" or 6'3"? So what about the doorway?
Yeah.
That's 2 metres
Someone
high.
you know that size. How much over 6 someone that looks.
Yeah, so someone that you know and who you know is 6 foot, so he's a little bit taller than somebody. He's about the height of the door, is that what you think?
Well, it's not quite, no, that's usually 2 metres.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's
So what you're using there is describing to me that you've got personal references or benchmarks for people's heights. And some of you have moved into metrics and are using metric benchmarks, but a lot of you are still in our cultural milieu for height, which is still 6 foot, 5 foot, etc. So they're personal. They're personal, they depend on where you grew up, when you grew up, and they're things that you own, and it's through cultural familiarity or your familiarity with something that you get those benchmarks. And do you think everyone would use the same benchmarks that you used? That was a particular piece of knowledge about the door. Suzanne, what were you going to say?
All of our personal life experiences are different to each other. So, I mean, Vicky knows that that's about 2 metres. That's not everyone else would.
Yeah, so Vicky's been building a house, very personal thing, now knows about doors and a whole lot of other stuff, I'm sure, to do with those things, but other people don't have that experience. Some people might have worked in health, so they have a whole lot of different personal references and might have been able to hazard a guess at weight and all sorts of things from that experience. So depending where we grew up, what work we've done, what we're from, we've got personal references. And that's, as I say, the things that you know about, that you're familiar with. And what we're trying to do with our students is to help them acquire a set of personal references that relate to the measurements they need, which today is metric measurement in our society, for most of it anyway. And we want to help them get ones that are appropriate to their lives and their work, not something that we've done. So that's what we're aiming to do in measurement in numeracy context. And I guess that's what the difference is between numeracy and mathematics. In school, maybe they don't care about that. They just want everybody to understand the metric system, how it fits together, and do sums to convert from one thing to another. We want them to visualise, think about what they know, be able to compare it to what they're looking at and make estimates of what's right and wrong, so that they don't put the wrong weights on the shelf and kill somebody, as I was talking about last time, so that they don't, so that they can make a reasonable estimate of what's in front of them if they've got enough materials for it, if they're not being defrauded by people bringing in too many cartons in a container and not paying the tax on them, things like that. We're talking about adult worlds. I'll go back to that one later. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say a sense of measurement, that we can look at something and hazard some sort of guess because we've got some background to do that. What we're now going to try and do is to get some length references going. Now this is based on something that was in Breaking the Maths Barrier, which is called Experiencing Success with Metric Length, which is in the success, starting your students with a successful experience section of Breaking the Maths Barrier, because everybody gets better at this if they started bad, and that makes them feel really good because they've learned something new. So it's something that's really good to do early in a course. So it's another activity model. So it's a model that we can apply from one situation to another, and it's called guess, estimate and measure. First guess by looking, then estimate using some sort of reference. In this case we're going to use hands, and we're going to learn how to do that, and then measure using an accurate measuring tool. So we get people to start thinking, what do I know? Can I make an estimate? Okay, so I'm going to start off this activity by asking you, just on your paper, without looking at any rulers or anything, to draw what might be a 10 centimetre line. It's not something to worry about, just do it. Now I'm going to give you some tape measures. You can check your 10 centimetre line.
We have to share. Do you want to go first?
We could just use opposite ends of the
Okay, I'll have to do subtraction.
Okay, so check your 10 centimetre line. Okay, so some personal reference, and these are very personal and always on hand, as they say, is going to be your hands. Now, a close approximation for most people, in our society anyway, is across the palm. And to do that, you need to put your palm onto the tape measure. Don't wrap it around because you're trying to get a flat measure. For me, it's just there with my thumb, just natural.
See where your little finger goes.
So has everybody found their 10 centimetre?
Can't go anywhere. She was perfection.
Perfection.
Yeah, sorry
okay.
to begin with.
So some people have to remove their thumb out of it altogether. Some people have to hold their thumb out, and some people have to hold it in.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
So as long as you know where your 10 centimetres and you laid it out on the tape like that, right?
Really angle mine to get that.
Now I want everyone to measure their hand span. Hand span is where you stretch it out like you're going to play a very big chord on the piano. And lay it down on the tape measure and see what yours is.
Nothing there. To get 20. 20?
Piano player, mine is going to be
80 to 100.
I've got squid fingers.
And I've got short fingers, but I can still get 100. Oh, you got long fingers.
I've got squid fingers, look.
Yeah.
Can I just get you to tell me your hand span? 19, 20, 17,
But 22.
22. Okay, isn't that interesting? Mine's 20. What's yours, Sherman? 18 and a half. So as you can see, in this cultural group of people, we're averaging around 20. Now, Kimberley, because his is 22, will have to, when he does his handspan measurements, sort of make allowances by not stretching his hand out quite so far and working out how far he needs to stretch it. Others, if they're 19, will have to know that they have to take a bit off at the end. But now, we're going to use these as measuring devices, so it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, or it's 20, 40, 60, 80. And if you're not quite 20, then you're going to be just making that adjustment. So students need a little bit of practice with that, with their own. It's no use pretending they've got somebody else's hands. They need to work it out for themselves. Okay, now we need a 1 centimetre. Can anyone suggest what they've got for a 1? Yeah, we've all got a digit somewhere.
No rude fingers.
Now, you can try all your fingers till you find the perfect one. You might have to have it sideways on the tape or flat on the tape. Again, lay it down because you don't want a curved measure. Okay, has everybody found their 1 centimetre? So we've now got 10, 20, 1 or 1. Okay, now we've got to go big. We've got to find our 1 metre. Now, for most people, you can start at your shoulder. And listen to this, because this is not a yard. This is a metre. You start right over at your shoulder, and you're going to go out there somewhere. Now, depending on the length of your arm, you might want to be closed fist or to your wrist or like that. So you need a partner now, and you need them to hold the tape measure there and work out, not from your nose, but from your arm.
Okay, so it's to the end of your
part of the shoulder.
ring finger. Okay, so it's to the end of your little finger. So that's quite different. Yours was your little finger.
Shana, can you stand up? Shana, we're modelling good practice. You've got to hold this at my shoulder.
That's the way it comes to.
So you might have to close your hand a little bit. Oh, so there. Yeah,
There you go.
Okay. We've got all those measurements that are length measurements, but what if you want to go up and down? You cannot do this for a vertical measurement. So it's a really good idea to get an idea of a vertical metre too. And from that, we go from the ground up. So we get somebody else to measure.
So the ground up. Oh, thanks. All right, so it's right there on my hip bone. Okay, so that's 1 metre? Yes. No, your step? On the ground now? To my waist. Yep. Yeah. Or where my waist? Where it used to be. That was a reflection on my own, not yours. Yeah, I suppose on the top of the hip bone.
The next exercise, I'm going to ask you to use these tools, and we're going to do the guess, estimate and measure. And because this is an exercise that I do with students quite early on, I like to get them to know each other. So you will see the measurements that I'm asking you to do with your partner will get you up close and personal. You can do sort of less exciting things like measuring tables and chairs and stools and things.
You're quite short, aren't you? 5, I'm going.
Okay, I was just asked how did this go in East Timor, and I'll show you. Do you like that one? So they got into it, all right? So guess first by looking, then you're allowed to estimate with your hands. And then, okay, so first just make a guess.
What are you guessing first?
5, 6. I've got to do it in metrics.
Yes, I think you've got to do it in metrics. Because we've worked all these out in metrics, haven't we?
Would you be about 161 centimetres?
Probably doesn't work if I tell you the answer. Deb, I probably have messed it up. I don't know the circumference of my head off the top of my head, so you're safe to try and work that out.
And we can do this, can't we?
Yep. You have to guess first and then use your measures.
Oh, okay, so 50 centimetres.
Okay.
50.
I think your estimation one is where you have to use.
Oh, then you actually measure.
Yeah, and then you measure. So it's a 3-step, I think.
I'm starting from there. 20. 40.
Okay, 7 centimetres.
Where did I start? 60. Let's start.
Yeah, we're probably more like here, I think.
So I'll say 60. And 63.
It's a good decision to go second because I'll have some idea what the answers are.
So it's a foot, isn't it?
55.
Okay, estimate now. Oh, using
Partner's foot length.
Fantastic.
So I would say 30 centimetres.
6, 4, 7, 8.
Yeah.
So I reckon half of 10 centimetres.
So 20. Oops. So 25 centimetres.
So
If you can remember this as a model, not just this activity we get together, and can be used for any sort of measurement. And in another department in Timor, we were using it in the customs department because it was extremely important that they have a rough idea of a ship container and how many cartons will fit in it so that people aren't continually defrauding them about tax and things. So we were doing a guess estimate measure of that, and then how many of them will fit into a larger space, and we're doing the guess estimate and measure of that. But they got right into it, and so it doesn't have to be body things, but if to them it's important to know carton sizes and things like that, then that's what you use. If it's about knowing tool sizes and building bits and pieces, then use the building, you know, so use what's appropriate. But as you can see, that doing it with each other is sort of fun and it breaks the ice. So if you don't know each other very well at the beginning of a year of a class, it's a great thing to do. It works. Now, the final test, whether you have improved or not, is take the tape measures away and now see if you can draw a 15 centimetre line using your estimation tools. That's why we're getting these tools, so we can use them.
Yeah, but I don't think I'm going to start this one, so that's
Well, now can I measure it? I don't know. Have you got one of these? That's complete.
Okay, and when you've done it and committed, then you can measure it and see how well you went. There has been improvement. Some people were very good at the beginning and have stayed good. Some people have gone downhill, got a bit overconfident, I'd have to say, but it's been good. And you can see how effective. And I have never done this with a class of students without them coming back the next week and tell me all sorts of things they did with these hand measurements, whether it was planting seedlings or measuring the furniture they were about to buy or anything. They always come back with stories, so they really love it. I think that this guess, estimate and measure model can have many applications if we keep remembering to suggest to students, have a guess first and then, well, we'll estimate and now we'll calculate. if they're doing statistics calculations, finding averages, things like that, get them to think about what the expected result is going to be if they're doing a calculation, not just blindly go in there punching numbers into a calculator and any old result will do. I was talking to an engineer one time and I was telling him some about what I was doing that day, which was a PD thing, and he said, oh yes, that's really good. I was teaching these engineers, they were manufacturing engineers, and it was about factory, and as a warm-up exercise we did this calculation of if a conveyor belt was going from here to here and that it needed this much time and this much time and there was this much distance, and they said, how fast would the belt be going? And one of his really bright students in third year at university answered him 300 kilometres an hour after a calculation. Did not blink that this was a ridiculous answer for a conveyor belt going through a factory. So that idea of what would you expect the answer to be before you make the calculation or before you accept the result, it's sort of important, and it's not been instilled in anyone much about those sorts of things. The activity shown in this video is called Estimating Lengths in Metric Units. It's published in Building Strength with Numeracy, the online resource from Velbeck. Another activity in the same section estimates longer lengths or distances. It is called Paces for Estimating Metres. How far will my plane fly is also a fun activity included to encourage students to practice using paces as a measuring tool. The resource also contains several other activities to engage students in estimating everyday quantities. One of my favourites uses collections of containers like these. The volumes, for example 300 mils written on the labels, have been cut out or covered over and replaced with labels A, B, C, etc. Students are then asked to use their existing knowledge to estimate the capacity or volume of each. I always include some tricky bottles of very different shapes but equal volumes. This way, students realise how heights can be very deceptive when it comes to containers. This can lead to some lively discussion. It also encourages students to be aware of tricky packaging when they are shopping. There's a similar activity, How Heavy Is That, for estimating weights, and one called Just a Minute for estimating times.